Welcome, everybody. This is our first time having a program committee meeting on Zoom, and Steve Wiser was brave enough to do our initial offering with the help of our tech committee. So many of you already know Steve. You know a lot about him. He's been to LGS many times. But for those of you who are new to Steve and our website, Steve is a lifelong resident of Louisville. He went to St. X High School. He went to the University of Cincinnati School of Architecture. He's been involved in the Louisville community improvement efforts since the 1970s. He's still president of the Louisville Historical League. Nobody will let him quit. And he has a passion for local history. He recently retired as an associate and director of health design for JRA Architects, and he says he is loving this change of focus. But we are fortunate that Steve remains devoted to history and preservation. In this presentation, he will identify some small and little known cemeteries in the St. Matthews area and show how those interred there provide parallel insights into our own history and genealogy. Welcome, Steve.
Hello, hello. Good deal. So am I to begin now? Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, I also wanted to introduce, of course, Jack Koppel. Jack is Mr. Cemetery Historian in Jefferson County, and while he isn't going to actively participate in this presentation, he definitely helped assemble what you're about ready to see. And so here's some of Jack's profile information that you should be able to see there. Jack's very active at all sorts of things. We thank him for his dedication and passion towards all of this. Of course, Jack has his DVD that hopefully everyone has purchased by now, but if not, you can contact Jack Koppel, and it's a great resource for cemeteries. Definitely deserves a medal for doing all of that. That is a lot of work. And some of my bio information. I still only have a couple of books left. Most of my books have sold out, but these two are still remaining. And if anyone's interested in some more of my books that I have. By the way, some of the people we'll be talking about here today are in my Haunted Houses of Louisville book. They're haunting places. And then, as noted earlier, prior to the presentation beginning, if you're interested in knowing anything more about my talks and tours in the future, or would like a copy of this presentation, however, but you can communicate with me by emailing me at wiseraa@hotmail.com. And we can communicate, and I can send you whatever you're looking for in that regards. Also wanted to thank Ellen White. I don't believe Ellen is a part of the presentation today, but she definitely contributed a lot to this presentation. She has visited, I think, most of the cemeteries in the St. Matthews region. And so I'll be talking about Ellen throughout the presentation and some of her information. So cemeteries of St. Matthews and surrounding areas. We're just not going to be talking St. Matthews per se, the city limits, but also nearby areas around St. Matthews, such as in Crescent Hill or Indian Hills, somewhat nearby St. Matthews, if you will. So St. Matthews and other areas. This is the 1858 Bergman map of Jefferson County. And all those little dots that you see on this map represent property owners. And most of the property owners back then had cemeteries on their property. As Jack can attest to, there are over 300 cemeteries in Jefferson County. By the way, if you'd like a version of this 1858 Bergman map, I believe it is on the Smithsonian's website. Just put in your Google search engine 1858 Jefferson County map, and it should pop up. It's very interactive. You can zoom in and out of that map. It's a great resource, and a lot of us historians use this map on a regular basis to look at what used to be back in the day. So 1858 Bergman map. And this is an image from the Bergman map that indicates property owners, where they were at. And these are all individuals who had cemeteries on their property. And so we'll be talking about these here shortly. Here's a list of the cemeteries we'll be discussing today. This is in alphabetical order and not in the order in which we'll be discussing them, though. The first, probably the most well-known, and again, it's not in St. Matthews directly, but just adjacent to St. Matthews, is the Zachary Taylor Family National Cemetery. I'm certain most of you are familiar with it and probably have been there as such. The little red dot that you see there on the screen, that's the location. It's right off Brownsboro Road near the Waterston Expressway. Very high-profile location. Of course, the burial place of our president, Zachary Taylor. Although he was not born in Jefferson County, he moved here when he was a year of age and considered Louisville his home. Now, this property of land, and Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, but where his burial site is not part of the National Cemetery. Although the National Cemetery maintains this plot of land, this plot of land is still part of the original Taylor family estate and is not part of federal land, although federal government maintains it. Is that correct, Jack? If you want to.
Yeah, that is correct. And if you look just to the left of where he is now, that's where he was originally. And it's so he sort of moved up, you might say, and has a real nice one now.
And they always do a nice ceremony on the date of his birth, November 24th. They do a little ceremony there that you see in the lower right-hand corner. And of course, old Zach, what was it, in 1992, they had to drag him out of there to see how he actually died. So, little history there of old Zach. Some more things of the cemetery. Most of his family members are buried in that location. And of course, all the soldiers, U.S. soldiers buried at the National Cemetery there. I believe that National Cemetery is full. Is that correct, Jack, that you're aware of? Do they have any more burials going on there?
They have more burials going on. However, it's sold out. There is a waiting list. If somebody decides to be buried somewhere else, whoever's on the top of the list can move in there if they like.
Gotcha. The next cemetery that a lot of us drive past is off Browns Lane, near the Norton Suburban Hospital, Baptist Hospital locations there. Just off Browns Lane, you can see the Mallard Crossing Apartments up above there. This is the Brown Lawrence Family Cemetery, and you can walk past it. If you're in Brown Park, you can go over and take a look at it. This is one of the Brown homes. I believe this is now their clubhouse, I think, for Mallard Creek Apartments, I believe. Yeah, it says clubhouse. I'll leave this up just a little bit if y'all want to read some of that text that Ellen White had written. But the Browns own a lot of the land in this district. Move on. Probably the most famous Brown house, though, is this one here, Theodore Brown's home. It's now called the Inn at Woodhaven. I think it's still called the Inn at Woodhaven. I know it was for sale a few years ago. I'm not certain if it's still called Inn at Woodhaven or not. But Theodore Brown house, nice Carpenter Gothic home there. That's visible off of, I think Hubbard's Lane. It's on there, 401 South Hubbard's Lane. More pictures of the Brown Family Cemetery. Now then, there's a lot of confusion as to this Brown and the more famous Brown, who is James Graham Brown. They both owned property in this area. James Graham Brown was not related to the other Browns, of whom Browns Lane is named for. James Graham Brown, I believe, was originally from Madison, Indiana. If anyone wants to correct me, they can, but I think he's actually a Hoosier and not from Louisville, but came to Louisville to seek his fame and fortune. And he had a family farm here, and that's why, and Brown Park is named after J. Graham Brown, not Brown's Lane. Very confusing, and I'm sure hopefully y'all have dealt with this previously, but anyways, a little text there describes more about this acreage that James Graham Brown once owned. There was a house located on it at one point, which has since been demolished. But the other Browns had a cemetery, part of Brown Park. Very confusing, but hopefully y'all caught there's a statue of James Graham Brown in front of his hotel downtown, the Brown Hotel, which is right there. Hopefully y'all are seeing that. And the other Browns had a slave cemetery. They did have slaves on their farm, and Jack Koppel vetted this out a few years ago as to where it was located. So the red in the lower level there that's the Brown family cemetery, and then the little yellow triangle up north of that is where the slaves were buried. And they are actually in this apartment complex. It's where you see that little yellow sort of diagram there that you see. So that's the exact location, that vacant land area. There are some rocks still there that supposedly mark some of the slave grave sites. And that's one of the unfortunate things about a lot of the cemeteries in Jefferson County is we just don't know where all the slave burial locations might be. Jack comes across them every so often, but for instance, we looked for the, the Height family slave burial ground a few years ago and could not find it. We think they're buried near the Height family cemetery, but we did some digging and could not find where they might have been. Now this cemetery, the Kane Station Thomas Family Cemetery, again, it's not in St. Matthews. It's actually borders on the Crescent Hill area. In fact, the lower part across Brownsboro Road is the Crescent Hill Golf Course and Mockingbird Gardens entranceway there. But this is a cemetery many of us drive by on a regular basis. And talking about it here, Ellen White visited the graveyard a couple of years ago and provided this text. It is a very well-maintained cemetery. And that's a photograph I took of it from the 7th tee at Crescent Hill Golf Course. Cemetery there. Very well maintained. Some of the headstones that are there at the location. Okay, this is back towards the St. Matthews area. This is Oxmoor Toyota, which is off Shelbyville Road, across from Oxmoor Mall area. And where you see that red star, there is actually a cemetery at that location. These are images of it. We do not know much about it, who is buried there. It is fenced off and is a designated cemetery, but that's about as much as we know. As you can tell, a lot of the markers have been damaged and lost over time. Okay, this is Wood Road Cemetery. It's in the upper right-hand corner of this aerial image that you're looking at there. Hopefully you can see the little red dot and 414 Wood Road right in the middle of that subdivision there. Some of the images there of some of the headstones. Again, Ellen White visited this cemetery and provided us these photographs. Not much known about this other than we call it the Wood Road Cemetery. It's literally in someone's backyard.
Steve, actually, I'm the one that took the photographs there and went to her backyard. I knocked on the door and the guy said, "No, I don't have a cemetery on my property." And I said, "Well, I think you do." And he wanted to know if I was going to buy his house, and because he was selling it. He didn't want anybody to know that he had a cemetery in his backyard. But he did say, "Oh yeah, I do have some stones back there." So I went back there. They were all covered up with leaves and everything. You couldn't see anything. And Ellen and I did some research on it, and we found out that it's John S. Roman, who was a blacksmith. He had a shop right there at Shelbyville Road. Don't know what it was called at the time. But anyway, the cemetery is John S. Roman Cemetery is what we call it now. We discovered that after this presentation was done the first time. And so we probably will scratch the Wood Cemetery.
So yeah, I can see in the upper left-hand that marker does say John S. Roman. I can take it that's Roman there. He was a Mason, it appears. But I will correct this on my on the presentation, Jack, for whenever we give it again. By the way, I do like headstones that do have symbols on them that kind of give us a glimpse of what you did in life. Some of you may know I'm the tour guide at Cave Hill Cemetery, and when you see headstones, it's great when you see a Masonic symbol like we do here on John S. Roman's headstone, or even more. There's one headstone in Cave Hill. On the back of it, these folks put everything they did in life, where they went on vacation, what they liked to eat. I mean, it was a whole description of their life as such. And I know we kind of chuckle at that, but 100 years from now, their descendants will go there and say, "Oh, look what great-great-great-grandfather liked to do on his vacation, or what he liked to do in life." It's a great way of going about, passing on, if you will, your life to your descendants. And I plan on doing that to my parents' headstone here shortly, putting some symbols on their headstone about what they like to do. So I highly encourage that. The more you can put on your headstone to give us historians more to work on, that would be good to know, other than going back in the obituaries, which nowadays it's easy to look up obituaries, isn't it, Jack? But back in the day, microfiche, that was a little bit challenging to do. But still, put it on the headstone and the descendants can better understand what you love to do in life. Okay, here's another awkward location for a cemetery. It's off of Shelbyville Road, just to the east of Oxmoor Mall. Back in this, I think this is a senior living facility here, this Oxmoor Lodge area. And that's all we have of it. Not a whole lot to go on there, but it is outlined as far as the cemetery is concerned. But again, all the headstones have been removed, it would appear. There might be a couple of stones. And I would hazard to guess, if that stone wall was not there, you might not know there would be a cemetery at all there, and probably may have been built on by now. Didn't, Jack, we think that this might have been a slave cemetery, perhaps?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to speculate one way or the other. It does look like at least one stone there could maybe be the shape of a tombstone, maybe on that wall, and embedded into the wall. The only reason why we really know it's a cemetery is Metro government has a survey map that shows it's a cemetery. I don't know how accurate that is, but it does look like a cemetery there. And right behind it, right behind the bushes, is another cemetery. And Steve, I don't know if we have that one on the presentation or your presentation or not.
No, I do not. I do recall y'all referencing that earlier.
Okay, it's a very small cemetery with a stone wall around it. But anyway, Metro government does have it says a cemetery, and that's what we're going on.
Okay, this is off of Herr Lane, obviously the Herr family cemetery. Again, in someone's backyard at the 7211 Arrowwood Road, it would appear, near Jefferson Place Senior Living Facility. And here's a lot of history on the Herr and Herr and Rudy family folks whose streets are pretty well known in the St. Matthews area. Let y'all read some of that text. And I'll move on. Again, if you want to read more of this or get more of this information, I can email it to you. Here are some of the photos of that cemetery. Okay, this is Herr family cemetery number 2. Again, kind of an awkward location. It's at 6212 Two Springs Lane, which is just off Rudy Lane, between Westport Road and Brownsboro Road. Some photographs of that. And then number 3 for the Herr family. And this is off Brownsboro Road, off Waterford Road. I was at 730 Waterford Road, again in someone's backyard it would appear, near the Waterson Expressway area. I'll let you all read some of that so that you can get a better understanding. And this is that cemetery there. Now then, the next cemetery is off Westport Road, again near the Waterson Expressway. You see the little red dot there in the left center of that aerial view, 4417 Westport Road. And I drive by this on a regular basis, as well some of you may also. But the house and the cemetery are located way back on the property there. And there's a gate there that you cannot drive back, so it's pretty well locked off. Let y'all finish reading that.
Steve, I think we have a descendant from the cemetery. Betty, are you here? Aren't you related to, actually, is your maiden name Height?
She's probably muted.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that we mute. But anyway, Betty sent me some information on this. And so we do have a descendant from the cemetery.
Yeah, I was going to ask if anyone could talk about any cemeteries they were related to, but since they're muted.
Yeah, at the end, you can open that up and then maybe Betty can talk with us.
But there are some of the those images of some of the headstones there in that cemetery.
I am related to that family through a different line of 9 generations back. So they're related, but we are quite a ways back before we connect.
Oh, geez. Okay, this cemetery at 710 Victoria Place, it's in the far left-hand corner of your screen there. You see the little red dot in the very far left-hand corner. And the reason why I put it there is to show you where Brownsboro Road is and in relationship to the Waterson Expressway. So it's on Brownsboro, somewhat near the Waterston Expressway, across from Zachary Taylor National Cemetery almost. And it's near the United Church of Christ Church United Methodist there. It's nearby. I don't know why you would call it the Rat Castle, their home, but they may have had a varmint problem at one point, I would suppose. I got a mole varmint problem at my house right now. I mean, I call mine the Mole Castle. But anyway, some images of that area. So there still is a lot of history of the St. Matthews area with the namesakes and the houses and the cemeteries in this area.
And I have to speak up on that last slide if you want to go back for a second. If you can see there's sort of a fence line there. What the two homeowners have done, I don't know if it's the present homeowners, but they put a fence down the middle of the cemetery. This is designated as a 1 acre cemetery. So there's quite a few people buried there. I mean, there could be hundreds. We're only looking at a few stones. On the other side, there are a couple of stones, but these people put a fence right down the middle. I tried calling Metro government, but they didn't do anything. Mm. But anyway, it is a large, pretty good sized cemetery. Maybe it became a community cemetery, not just a Rudy Graveyard. I'm not sure. Mm.
And then another Rudy burial ground at 4305 Westport Road, again in the middle of a residential area.
What you're seeing now is those, the last slide is where the cemetery was. And when they widened the road, they accidentally hit one person and they found out that people were buried there. And so they've removed some of them, not all of them. And those little markers right there is from the other location on Westport Road.
Yeah. And one of the more famous cemeteries of St. Matthews region, the Bullitt Family Cemetery, which again, hopefully everyone is familiar with or has seen it. It's pretty prominent if you go to Oxmoor Center. This is a little bit, speaking of genealogy, some genealogy of the Bullitt family. There's actually Alexander Scott Bullitt, I believe, that built the Oxmoor and founded the cemetery. Yeah, it says so. 1787, Oxmoor Farm was built. So, gives a lot of famous names there with the Churchills and Prathers mentioned. Hopefully everyone has been in this room here at Oxmoor Farm. It's one of the largest private libraries in the state of Kentucky. It's now, I think it's managed now by the Filson Historical Society. Hopefully I have that correct. I know I've given several talks in this room. Spectacular space. By the way, if you ever in this area and you drive back there and the gate is open, drive in and take a look around. They won't run you off. It is a public area. For the most part, though, they keep the gate locked. But if you notice that the gate's open, just drive back in there and take a look around. It's a very beautiful location, a lot of great things to see back in this area. But there is the Bullitt Family Cemetery right there at the intersection of those roads. Kohl's department store is in the upper left-hand corner, and the old Sears department store is on the right. That's an aerial view of the cemetery. Another view of it. This has to be one of the most well-known, documented cemeteries in Jefferson County for a private location, private family. They have all the accurate records of who's buried where at this cemetery. Oh, who could that be? He's outstanding in his field. Me and Jack were there a few years ago.
They always have that gate locked. It's only for family members. And Steve and I gave a presentation there at the nice building that you just saw a little while ago, and they let us in there because this cemetery was going to be one that we talked about. So I had to get a picture because not many people have been in that cemetery besides family members. So Steve was nice enough to take a picture of me.
And here is a document indicating where folks are buried there in that cemetery. If you have the great Sam Thomas, the historian Sam Thomas book on Oxmoor Farm, I believe that's where I got this illustration from, but they do know where everyone's there and they keep it well maintained. Of course, they have enough money to keep it well maintained, but it's my understanding that the Bullitt family still owns all the land under Oxmoor Mall and they rent that mall out, from what I understand. There's it was a photograph from what? I think this was the 1920s. I don't have the exact date of it, but anyways. Yeah, 1922.
And there's the tombstone for Kate Bullitt there. I think she was the last one that lived there at the Oxmoor house. And she at one time dated JFK. And she was, as you can see by reading that, very good at tennis.
And they actually have a tennis court there on the family farm, which I'm sure she had something to do with. Oh, we don't exactly know what this is. On the back of this person's headstone is this engraving that says, "What's your trouble, kid?" Evidently, that must be on the popular saying that this person said. Yeah, it's CVC, which are his initials. But anyways, found that curious. And just out the back door of the Oxmoor Farm house is a pet cemetery. They have all their pets buried there, and here are some of their headstones. Jack, are there any other pet cemeteries in Jefferson County? This may be the only one I'm familiar with.
I'm sure there is, but that's not my line. I don't seek those out.
I know I buried our pet dog in our backyard way back in the day. I'm sure other people do similar things. Another nearby cemetery to the Bullitts are the Arterburn family cemetery. You can see it there in the yellow box. It's right adjacent to the Waterston Expressway. And this is an old aerial photograph because some of you may know they built a huge hotel right adjacent to this cemetery just in the last few years. Just a little information on it. The Arterburns. There's a street in Crescent Hill named Arterburn, which I'm sure is a reference to this family. Of course, in Jefferson County, the most famous Arterburns were the slave owners or the slave pens downtown. Now, these Arterburns are not, to my knowledge, they are not buried in that cemetery. I think one or both are in Cave Hill, from what I understand. But anyways, but some of you may be familiar with the Arterburn Dam, and it's usually associated with the slave pens that they operated down at 2nd and Main area. Or 1st and Market in Jefferson, as it says there. The Burks Family Cemetery, another prominent cemetery that most of us have seen or driven past, is there off Breckinridge Lane. The Burks house is on Winchester Place. Still there. Some information on them. There's an aerial view of that cemetery. Probably 99% of the people that drive by this area do not even know the cemetery is there, because that's what it looks like from street view. Has all those shrubs placed up around it. Unfortunately, it is open. The gate is left open, so anyone can go inside it. I take it the retail center maintains the cemetery. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm guessing they do. There are some of the headstones within it. And then the Ross Family Cemetery. This is on the east side or south side of the Waterston Expressway, just off Breckinridge Lane. You can see the Breckinridge Inn in the upper.
Steve has frozen just for a second. We'll see if he comes back in just a second. This cemetery, he was saying, was the Burke Cemetery. And Mrs. Ross was her married name. Her first husband is buried there. I think she's the one started in the middle. Okay, now I think he's going to be back. And this is the Ross Family Cemetery. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, sorry, Jack. I think I lost you a little bit there. You still there with us?
Yeah, we lost you for a second, and I was sort of filling in.
Yeah, I'm on Spectrum, and Spectrum cuts out every so often. Am I still going here, Jack? Are you finished with what you were saying?
Yeah, you can go ahead. This is the Ross Cemetery we're at now. You go ahead and pick it up.
Yeah. Some more photographs of the Ross Cemetery and some information on them. And that last line there about sad example of a graveyard in a nice neighborhood where no one bothers to take care of it. Unfortunately, that's what, Jack, I would say that's the majority of cemeteries in Jefferson County that are private. There's that one headstone. Floyd Parks Cemetery is off Breckinridge Lane, which is just past the Jamestown Apartments there. Not much to see at this cemetery, not a whole lot of headstones there at it. I think there's one or two prominent headstones. And then probably I think the most, historic, other than Zachary Taylor's, the more historical cemetery in St. Matthews area is the Floyd-Breckinridge Cemetery. It's located again in the middle of a residential area there. It was a Jamestown and Prince William Drive area. John Floyd, I believe, is buried in this cemetery, although I don't think his headstone is still there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, but I don't think his headstone's there. We'll see.
Yeah, I think he has a ledger.
There is a ledger. It may be on this presentation, but yeah, John Floyd was killed by Indians, I believe. But his name still lives on with Floyd's Fork. A lot of Floyd references in this area are related to John Floyd. There is the cemetery location. The headstones. I put together this little genealogy chart a few years ago to kind of indicate all the Floyd, Breckinridge, and Caldwell family connections. And it's, again, if you're interested in receiving this, send me an email and I can forward it to you. But I had to put this together to make all the ends meet. Very confusing because the Floyds married into the Breckinridge family. The Breckinridges are fairly well known here in the area. Why there is an E in Breckinridge Street or Lane or whatever it is there, it's all conjecture of how that all came about, but the actual name is with an I, not an E. And the Caldwell family, which also was connected to the Breckinridge and Floyd families, they had this nice home that was part of Bowman Field, just off Pee Wee Reese Road, where that red circle is there. That's where the house was. And there are still remnants of the house at that location. Some of the foundation is still there. But they owned all this land where Bowman Field was, plus all the way over to Breckinridge Lane. They owned a lot of land. Here is the 1858 Bergman map and indicating some of their property they owned, again, out there by Bowman Field. But they also owned, if you know where the Shelby Park neighborhood is in the inner city, they pretty much owned all that land around in the Shelby Park area as well. Here are the more famous Caldwell sisters who are buried in Cave Hill Cemetery, who are again are connected to the Breckinridges and the Floyds. And you'll notice the center, Mary Elizabeth Breckinridge Caldwell, she did change her Breckinridge name to an E in it. Now, why she did it, how that happened, again, we're all keep guessing as to how Breckinridge got the E in its name. Now the Caldwell sisters are buried in Cave Hill. The Breckinridges, a lot of them are buried in St. Louis Cemetery. And as you can see, they do have an I in Breckinridge there. And that is it. So we got books to sell if you're interested. Send me an email if you'd like a copy of this presentation. I'll send it to you via WeTransfer, which is a very simple way of sending you information. Jack's DVD. Thanks for attending. And so if you take people off mute and chat, I don't have the chat window on here. I want to keep the presentation up in case someone wants me to go back to see something, but let me see if I can see where some of the chats are.
I do have a question.
Okay.
When did it become, I don't know, was it illegal to continue to bury in these family cemeteries? And about when was that, or it wasn't fashionable?
Jack, you might be able to answer that. She's basically saying, when did they go from private burial grounds to having people buried in public burial grounds?
Well, I guess it was in the 1800s when they started, I mean, we had our first public cemetery on Jefferson between 11th and 12th. That was our Louisville's first public cemetery. And some of these small cemeteries were moved in there. But I think what you're asking is is it illegal to be buried in your backyard now, basically? And yes, you can. Now, I don't know about the old city of Louisville, but outside in the county is what I call, I'm old, so to me, the city of Louisville is downtown area. But yeah, just a few years ago, we had somebody buried on Fairdale area, and I haven't been to that cemetery yet. But and then just last year, I think a guy's son died, and he's buried. Oh, I forgot what the name of the street is. But anyway, yeah, they're still burying them out there. Did that answer your question?
I think so. I just didn't know if it was actually illegal to do that, but apparently not.
No,
Do you all
it's
remember a few years ago a family that put their teenage son in a glass coffin in his bedroom in their house?
Oh, geez. No.
I've often wondered what happened to that, but I remember it, and they let them do it as long as it was hermetically sealed.
Wow.
It is my understanding that it's illegal to dump ashes out on the river.
I don't know if that's true or not. You can do it in Churchill Downs on the racetrack if you like. I've worked out there for a lot of years as a part-time job.
Maybe
But,
it's the Corps of Engineers that has the problem then.
that could be. And Steve showed the Thompson Cemetery, also called the Kane Station Cemetery. They're still burying people in that family cemetery.
By the way, John Asher, the famous horse racing announcer and PR person at Churchill Downs, his ashes are scattered there on Churchill Downs' track.
Thank you.
There are no regulations. This is Millie Farmer. There are no regulations. Our church has a memorial garden with innumerable people with cremains. And when they first started this garden, like almost 20 years ago, they went into all the legal stuff, and anybody evidently has cremains can scatter them anywhere. And that's St. Matthew's Methodist Church, which our gardens are beautiful if anybody ever wants to go over there. And you're welcome to go by and walk through and everything. Right now, all the resurrection lilies are in bloom. It's really pretty, but we have a gardener who is a member. But anyhow, and he's one of the original people who got the memorial garden started. But evidently, there's no regulations about cremains. I don't know about bodies.
I have a question for Jack. Well, actually, I have a request for Jack. Jack, this is Pat Zimmerman, and I would like to talk to you about something. If I give you my phone number, if you would call me later.
Sure. I have your phone number here. I'll give you a call.
Thank you. I'm done.
There is a question, Jack, from someone. Says, how do you and Jack discover if burials are in a certain location?
Well,
I'm
let me
sorry,
start
what
out
was,
first, Jack.
what was the question?
He's trying to find out if
how does Steve and Jack discover if burials are in a certain location? I guess if there's a blank field, how do you discover if there's a burial there? Is that what you meant, Nancy?
Well, let me go first because I used Jack recently on a project. I was doing a new healthcare clinic out in Taylorsville, Kentucky, and the client bought this property, and so we put up the sign, we're going to build this healthcare clinic and all. And one of the neighbors came over and said, "Hey, we think there's a cemetery on that lot." We're like going, "Really?" Because none of the maps or anything that we had, any historical data, referenced the cemetery on this property. So I called Jack up and said, "Hey, Jack, can you come out? Let's walk this field and see if we can find anything." And there were no depressions or anything. There were no indications of a cemetery or any boundaries, if you will. Jack has a probe that he can stick down several feet and hopefully find some headstones or hit something that we might be able to dig for. And so we looked around, could not find anything. I did tell the construction crew, if they came across something, please let us know, but they never did. But that was one way we went around about looking for a cemetery. Jack, any other ways you want to let us know about?
Yeah, I can talk about the Heights Cemetery. It's out there around Bardstown Road and Heights Lane. They were going to build this great big drugstore, and they wanted to know where the slaves were because they didn't want to hit them. And what they do, they have an archaeologist come out and they dig these long trenches, and they look for grave shafts. They don't necessarily have to dig into a person. And I'm not always the most tactful person, the way to say things. Sorry about that. But they dig these long trenches, and you can actually see the shape of a grave. You know, I mean, it's 3 feet by 6 feet or whatever. You can see the outline. So that's another way they can find out. Also, the records. I've been helping Metro government. We've mapped out a lot of cemeteries that they didn't know about, and I even get one of the guys from Metro government to go out with me and show him the places, and he maps them. So we got every cemetery that we know of, marked, and that way, when somebody asks for a permit, it'll be a flag right away, cemetery on property or whatever.
Yeah. But the slave cemeteries, as Jack was saying, who knows, unfortunately they weren't as well marked as the other family cemeteries were.
Jack Bernauer has a question.
I do. I'm interested in the John Floyd Cemetery. I have ancestors who were in the Low Dutch settlement Floyd Station that was overrun by the Indians. And I didn't know if that cemetery might have some folks in it.
I'm not sure where the records of any of those cemeteries would be located. Would you, Jack, know where records of if anyone was buried in certain locations, I guess?
For instance, the Floyd Cemetery, I mean, people have went stone to stone and recording stuff. There's a nice book from the 1920s that have some of it, and those older ones are good to go to because those stones might be gone. In 1948, the Floyd Cemetery was done over. I mean, it was nothing but wilderness in there. Filson Club got in there, and they put some of the stones that Steve showed you are from 1948 area at that time period, and that stone wall is not in the correct spot, is what an old timer said in the newspaper back in the 1948 when it was built. There's our graves on the outside of that stone wall also, but we have no idea who they are.
One of the most famous grave sites in not Cave Hill, but in Jefferson County that we do not know where he is at is Abraham Lincoln's grandfather. He was killed in an Indian attack out in Middletown, and they've got a stone out at the Long Run Cemetery talking about him, but they don't know if he's there or where he might have been buried at. So, it's difficult to find some of the grave sites, but he was probably one of the more famous ones. We do not know where he's at.
Yeah, he's got Abraham Lincoln, that's what he was called back in the old days. He had a lot of acres out there, hundreds of acres, so he could be anywhere out there. But to show honor to him, they did put one right there at the back of the church. Of course, that church is no longer there. Just I think the foundation is still there. Anybody else have any questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mike King, did you want to talk about the Governor Isaac Shelby chapter of the SAR that's cleaning up cemeteries?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. The Governor Isaac Shelby chapter SAR out of Middletown, because we couldn't do the regular ceremonies because of the corona isolation, we started cleaning up historical graveyards and looking for them to mark them by GPS and stuff like that. So if anyone has any historical graveyards or even older graveyards, let me know, and we'll schedule going out there. We just got done doing the Floyd-Breckinridge. We brought out about 20 bags of refuse and branches from the trees, got all the vines off. We've done 25 other graveyards over the last 3 months throughout Kentucky and the Louisville area, mostly outside of Louisville. So if you have a graveyard where you need some labor to go in and clean up, let me know, and we'll be glad to pitch in. And I can be reached at, I think it was on the screen, but my name is Mike King. I'm at 502-548-6821. I'm also a member of LGS as well as the Governor Isaac Shelby Chapter SAR. So.
Right.
Thanks,
Yeah, I've
Mike.
got one for
Any
you,
more
Mike.
questions?
Mike,
Yeah,
I got one for you. I'll follow up with you on that.
There is one here asking whether Jack or Steve have ever used ground penetrating radar for grave searching.
Well, I believe there's 5 different kinds, and it's been a few years since I checked into them, and they cost like $50,000. If somebody wants to support me, I'll be glad to operate it. But no, I have not used one, but I understand that they're really good.
I hear nobody mention dousing graves.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I know there's some people here that do that, but I call it witchcraft. Yeah, some people swear to it.
I'm sorry, this is Mike King again. I have a grandpa that was in the War of 1812 named General King, who was from Burkesville, and they lost the entire grave site. We got some students from Western that were learning architecture and digging that actually came out and were able to locate literally all the graves in his graveyard.
Oh, wow.
There was also a dowser that was not able to find any of the grave spots. So,
Interesting.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories that people have found graves, and some of them. I was with one person one time, and she said that she could actually tell the sex of the person that's buried there, and where their feet and their head was. So,
I heard that too.
I just use my probe, and I look for headstones. The ones that are put in vaults are easy to find because you go down a couple feet and then you hit the vault. Then you go to a couple more feet and then you can see the shape of the vault. But that doesn't help on the cemeteries from the 1800s. So
Another famous lost grave site in Kentucky is Thomas Jefferson's sister. I think her name was Lucy, maybe, in Western Kentucky. They've since lost her grave site as well. So it's unfortunate some of these more famous grave sites are no longer with us. Anyways, does that wrap it up? We've kept it almost within an hour.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Steve, very much. We appreciate it.
Well, technically, I think it all worked well. I hope. I know we had a couple of glitches, but I think everything went well, huh?
Went pretty smoothly.
We appreciate it, Steve.
To everyone, don't forget, in 1 month, the second Tuesday in September, we have the George Prentice Bloody Monday. Was he a scoundrel or a scapegoat? And that will be presented by James Pritchard from the Filson Historical Society.